In today's lesson, I'm going to be talking about three very similar words. These three words have super similar definitions, and they can all be used as verbs or as nouns. The way we use these words in a sentence changes a little bit depending on if they're being used as a verb or a noun. Understanding the similarities between these words and how to use them correctly is going to help your English in your writing and your speaking. You'll be better understood by native speakers. If you want to avoid making common mistakes, be sure to check out my other videos for helpful tips and subscribe to my channel. First, let's take a look at all three of these words: affect, impact, and influence. Each one of these words is used to show a change in something. To start, let's take a look at these words when they are used as verbs. If you'd like to review nouns, verbs, and parts of speech, you can check out my other videos where I have quick lessons on parts of speech. Just skip to the section that says parts of speech. Here is the key point. When affect, impact, and influence are used as verbs, they do not need to be followed by the preposition on. You do not connect them to the object with on. So these sentences are correct. Loud noises affect my sleep. The drought has affected the region's agriculture. Studying abroad impacted my outlook on life. The new policy will impact the healthcare system. Bad weather can influence people's moods. The commercial influenced many people. On the other hand, these sentences are incorrect because the preposition on is used right after the verb affect, impact, or influence. You might be thinking, but Indiana, I have seen these words with on before. Like, that experience had an impact on me. But look closely at this sentence. Is impact being used as a verb or a different part of speech? Actually, the verb in this sentence is had. Impact is being used as a noun. Had an impact. It's totally fine to use affect, impact, and influence as nouns. Impact and influence look the same. They're spelled the same, whether they're used as nouns or as verbs. However, the A in affect changes to an E when it's being used as a noun. You can remember this by thinking A for action, the verb, and E for experience, the noun. So let's try to express the same ideas in the example sentences before, but with these words as nouns instead of verbs. So the most common verb to be used in combination with these nouns, affect, impact, and influence, is have. You can call this common combination a collocation. A collocation is when a word or a phrase is commonly used together with another word or phrase. But don't forget, when you use affect, impact, and influence as nouns, in order to show what is being changed, you need to connect them with the preposition on. Loud noises have an effect on my sleep. The drought has had an effect on the region's agriculture. Studying abroad had an impact on my outlook on life. The new policy will have an impact on the healthcare system. Bad weather can have an influence on people's moods. The commercial had an influence on many people. Notice the need for an indefinite article with these nouns: an effect, an impact, an influence. That's another hint that these are being used as nouns and not verbs. As you can see, these sentences are incorrect because they do not have the preposition on. So the key point is that effect, impact, and influence do not need to be followed by the preposition on when they're used as the verb in the sentence. But when they're used as nouns and to show the relationship between them and what's being changed, you should use on. A affects B, or A has an effect on B. Now that we understand the grammar rules, what about the definitions? When can we use influence and when can we use effect? As you can see with these definitions, all three of these words are really similar. There's lots of cases where using any of these three words sounds natural. For example, living on a farm when I was growing up had a big effect on me. Living on a farm when I was growing up had a big impact on me. Living on a farm when I was growing up had a big influence on me. Any of these sound natural to me. But in general, I would say, if you're not sure, use effect. Effect is the broadest, most general term out of these three. Impact tends to sound a little bit stronger and more dramatic than effect. Influence sounds a little more specific to your decision-making, your behavior, or your personality. For example, in this case, it sounds a little bit better to use influence. She influenced me as an artist. Effect and impact are a little bit vague here. How did she change you as an artist? But influence makes it sound like her style or her teaching really shaped and changed the way that you approach your artwork, how you do your artwork. She influenced your style, your decision-making, who you are. It's a little bit more about your character and your personality. Also, when we're talking about an influence that makes you take a certain action, it sounds better to use influence as a verb instead of as a noun. So this sounds better to me. My music teacher influenced me to pursue the violin professionally. This one doesn't sound as good. My music teacher had an influence on me to pursue the violin professionally. Finally, I want to talk about collocations again. Do you remember this word from earlier? A collocation is a word or a phrase that is frequently seen with another word or phrase. There are certain collocations and even idioms or set expressions where one word cannot be swapped out for a synonym. You should really just use that one word, even if the definition of that word is the same as another one. For this reason, I really recommend studying phrases and collocations when you practice new words. So, for instance, have you ever heard the expression under the influence? Under the influence means being drunk or high on drugs. For example, there are often campaigns in high schools that warns students never drive under the influence. This means never drive while you're drunk or high. You can't just swap influence for impact or effect here. It does not work. Native speakers will probably have no idea what you mean. Never drive under the effect. Never drive under the impact. It has to be never drive under the influence. It is a set expression. Here's another example with influence. A bad influence. We call people who encourage us to make bad decisions bad influences. For example, Lucy is usually a well-behaved child, but her older sister Maggie is a bad influence on her. They always get into trouble when they play together. We cannot say Maggie is a bad impact or a bad effect on Lucy. It has to be bad influence. There aren't so many of these strict set expressions with impact, but I did think of one for effect. A domino effect describes one action that triggers a change, and then that change triggers another change, and then a whole series of events, like a chain reaction, occur. This can be positive or negative, like a virtuous circle or a vicious circle. For example, when one of the runners tripped and fell on the track during the race, it caused a domino effect, and several other runners ended up falling and injuring themselves. You couldn't say domino impact or domino influence here. Okay, let's quickly go over this information. When effect, impact, and influence are used as verbs, they are not followed by the preposition on. When effect, impact, and influence are used as nouns, they are followed by the preposition on to connect with what is being changed. A lot of the time, you can use these words interchangeably or swap one for the other. Sometimes it sounds more natural to use one instead of the other. Also, there are many collocations or set expressions where you really can only use one of them. So, for example, under the influence. Okay, now it's your turn. Practice these words by writing responses to these questions in the comments. If I see any mistakes, I will correct them for you. Can you think of a person who has had a strong influence on your life? How did they influence you? Describe a recent event that had a big impact on your community. How does the weather usually affect your mood? Keep up the good work with your English studies.